Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today I want to talk about a particular quote that I saw on Pinterest. I was going through Pinterest and I saw a quote. So there was a ship that was parked in a harbor, and the quote was written over it, and it said that just because a ship stays in the harbor does not mean that's what it was built for. And I actually think that's a remarkable quote. And I was actually thinking about it, and if you think about it, the ship was built specifically to survive in the seas. Now, it does stay in the harbor sometimes, but that was not what it was built for. Even though it stays there, it wasn't built to be there. It was built to actually go and survive in the seas. All the capacities needed to survive the seas and the storms was already built into the ship, but it wasn't made to be in the harbor. And the potentials, the gifts, the talents, all the things that, metaphorically now, that the ship has would not be tested unless it goes into the seas. To actually know if the quality of the ship, it has to be tested in the seas and the storms. It's only the storms that can test the ship's abilities. And we can look at ourselves, we can use this and reflect on ourselves, on our abilities and what we can or what we believe we cannot do. And our abilities can only be tested when we're in the storms. You can only know who you are when you're in a storm or in a bad or tough situation. It's like if you're playing a video game and you have skills, like skill bars, and in one particular skill you're operating, the bar is at 100, so you've maxed it out. The other one is like 30. If you keep on developing or keep on working on the skill that is already at 100, you're not growing. You're just in your comfort zone. Growth and self-development is when you're working in your weaknesses. Is when you're working on your weaknesses, I should say, and improving that. But the problem is that's uncomfortable, and when we're about to do, because your body is not built for success, your body is actually built for safety. That's why you have your nervous system. So when you're about to do something that is uncomfortable or doesn't feel really good, or it's like signaling threat, your body brings up anxiety or some other emotion, and you run away from it, or you procrastinate or something. But the only way that the makers of a ship can test its quality is when it goes on the seas. I was watching a video of how air hostesses are trained, and they use like simulation planes to test them, to test the skills and the quality of the air hostess. So they use simulations to put air hostesses in situations that can happen, to test them, because that's the only way they can know how good the air hostess is, if the air hostess can operate in a real situation. And so the builders of the ship cannot know that a ship can survive or a ship is good enough to operate if its capacities are not tested. Even cars are test run, electric vehicles and all of this, so on and so forth. They are test run before they go out. And they're not test run when they're not doing anything. They're test run in doing things. And like I said before, you can only improve if you're working on your blind spots, on your weak areas, on areas that you're not necessarily very strong at. That's how you know you're improving. You can't improve when you're just working on the area you've always been working on. You're not improving, you're just in your comfort zone. The second thing I want to make mention of, I want to speak about, and I think this is very important, is about potential and utilizing your potential. Part of the dangers of being in your comfort zone is that your potentials will be wasted. The abilities you have will be wasted. the capacities you have will be wasted. Because just like that ship was created with built-in capacities to operate and survive the storms and the seas, God created you as well with abilities, gifts, and talents. And when you're in your comfort zone, you cannot test those abilities. You cannot test those talents. The full potential of what God put in you is not tested. It's basically like dormant. That's one of the dangers. And the problem is you're going to get old and die one day, by the way. This is only one life you have to live. You don't have two. Most likely you're not going to have a second chance. Most likely. Most people will not get a second chance. Most people get one. Oh, but what if I get a second one? Well, you don't know that. So you might as well make the first one count. And when you die, David Goggins was telling a story of a hypothetical situation. I don't know whether I believe in God or not, but regardless of whether I believe in God or not, for the sake of this particular story, David Goggins was like, if I died and I go to heaven and I met God, and his screen is projected beside him, and on the screen he sees the Navy SEAL, public speaker, all these remarkable things that he's achieved, he's a marathon runner and so on and so forth. But the person who appeared in heaven was who he was before. Fat, out of shape, poor, in a job he didn't like, hated his life in general. And then he looks at God and he's like, oh God, who is that? Who is that guy you're playing on the screen? And God says to him, that's who you could have been. That is a story about the waste of potential. The potential is just lying dormant and nothing is being done with the potential. And something interesting about potential is that potential cannot be measured or defined. Potential is limitless because potential speaks to what can be done, not what has been done or what has not been done, but what can. Nobody, and you do not truly know what you can actually even do until you actually try. So you actually have no idea what you can do. You don't know what you can do actually until you've tested it out. So you cannot know the limits of your potential until you've tested it out. And this is sort of nudging me into a completely different topic on identity and being stuck at age 5 or age 10 or age 13 when somebody told you, or your bullies or whatever told you were something, and you stuck with that identity your whole life and you haven't been able to break that limitation. What you need to understand, and one of the easiest ways to break out of it, and maybe I should make another video on identity if you want to. If you want me to, I can do that. But one thing about potential is that potential cannot be defined or measured. Potential is what can be done. It speaks to what can be done. And there is no limit or sort of measurement of that. Nobody knows what they can truly do, the extent that they can truly go. In the 100 meters race, there were world records that were set and they were beaten and beaten and beaten over and over again. Because we truly do not know what our true potential and our true capacity is. Of course, only our Creator knows what our true potential is. And like the stories I told about David Goggins, and also, of course, the story about the habour. There's also a story of the talents in the Bible. The Bible is one of the best literature you would ever come across, especially with the kind of stories it tells and the parables and so on and so forth. The parables of the sower, or no, not the sower, of the gift and talents, where the master gave them gifts and one of them buried their talents. That's the best scenario. That's like the best way of showing what happens when you do not use your potentials to its fullest. The potential is just dead under the ground, buried. Best way to describe a potential that is not being used: staying in your comfort zone. And if you notice, the other two guys who invested their talents and their gifts, they multiplied it times 2. So the first guy multiplied 5 and got 10. God congratulated him, the master who is God in the parable. The second guy multiplied and got 6, he was congratulated. And the third guy, who had a dormant wasted potential, look at what the master in God then said to him. He took his talent from him and gave it to someone else. That's what happens when you have wasted potential. That's essentially what happens. That's what God will do to you. This is the Bible, right? If we want to go a bit religious in this sense. So there are two major things, dangers I should say, with staying in your comfort zone. Number one is the one I just talked about, waste of potential. And number two is the first one I was talking about. You cannot know your true capacity or what you can actually do, which speaks to potential, as like I just said. But you can't know what you can truly do until you've been tested, until you leave your comfort zone. Growth is only growth when you're developing a part of you or a part of your life that you're weak at, a weak area, it's your blind spot, there's a gap. A lot of us have built routines around what we're comfortable at. We have built routines around video games where, because if you've been playing, maybe you're somebody who is, I don't know, addicted to video games and you like to play video games and you sort of built your comfort around it. You're so good at it, you never want to leave the video game. You can't survive in the real world. Or you've sort of over-invested in business that you've lost your social skills. You cannot talk to a girl, you can't hold a conversation, like you're awkward and so on and so forth. It's not because there's anything wrong with you, but you've just not developed that area. That's a blind spot. That is how you grow, by developing that part of your life that you haven't worked on for a long time. That's actually where growth happens. Growth doesn't necessarily happen by you doing the same thing over and over again. You will get good at that thing you're doing over and over again, and then you now have to diversify. It's essentially what it is. If you stay stuck on one thing, your potential is capped. It is the diversification that brings about fulfilling your true potential fully to its maximum capacity. I hope this blessed you and have a wonderful rest of your day. Goodbye. If you want me to make a video on anything, doesn't matter whether it's on this particular topic or on any other topic really, just make sure you leave a comment below and share this video, like it, subscribe. Bye bye.